Guys, what's up? Quick video on the Floss band. But before we get started, I kind of just introduced the reason why I think this is quite nice. Emily was playing college tennis for, what, a semester in the States?
2 semesters.
2 semesters in the States, so she's met with many certified athletic trainers, so not personal trainers, but athletic trainers, physical therapists in the States, and quite a few physiotherapists, and even doctors here and there. And a lot of them couldn't seem to fix her shoulder to the point that she basically wasn't able to play. So when I did my evaluation, it looked like a classic case of bicipital tendonitis, rotator cuff pathology, and just some impingement syndrome with the supraspinatus. So basically shoulder tendonitis. And she was doing all the correct stuff to make it better, but it just wasn't really getting better. So we continued with really everything you were already doing. I was just more strict with her by her continuing with the exercises, and as it started getting better, she was able to start playing a little bit, but I think the real piece that made it, I think the biggest difference was probably this Floss band, which she's kind of become addicted to. So we're going to do it real quick, and I'm just going to kind of take you step by step of how I do it. So it's your right shoulder, yeah? Alright, so basically she's just going to set her right arm up here. I always try to have the athlete face me. Depending on how big they are or how large your band is, if you buy your own and actually make it your own size, or you buy the already cut one, which this is, I'm going to basically, I want to capture, how do I say it, the muscular tendinous junction of a lot of these areas, because this is where a lot of the problems is. So I'm going to try to capture let's say the insertion point of the deltoid, and along with trying to kind of go above the joint line, getting a piece of that supraspinatus and possibly in back the teres major and the minor, just basically all the tendons where they start to attach or insert, if you will, into the shoulder, because I think that is where a lot of the problems occur. Is like I said a second ago, in that muscular tendinous conjunction. It's similar to basically the seam of a shirt, if you will. If something were to tear, the hole in the shirt probably is not going to come from here. It's going to come from more of the area where the seam is, and that is something similar that we see within injuries, I personally think, in the shoulder, or in any of the body part for that case. So, with that being said, I'm going to start about right here, because that's going to allow me to cross the joint and capture that supraspinatus, like I said. I'm going to go about 70% tension, about 50% overlap. Okay, it's a bit more than 50%. Either way, I think the important part is to get a good amount of tension and really try to cross this joint line. You've got to be a bit careful with it, or funny with it, because if you go too high, it tries to roll under the arm, so this just takes a little bit of practice in order to not to do that. And then I'm just going to kind of cross over the area, pull this up, kind of like tying off a rubber balloon. Get it under. The more you can get it under, the tighter it's going to stay. That's a bit tough there. Now there's a lot of different things you can do. However, I'm just going to have her lay down and get into the stretching position, and I'm just going to grind up her shoulder. We have about 2 or 3 minutes. We can keep this on before it probably starts to hurt a bit more than it should. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use my knee to have basically a shear force pulling back on that shoulder, as you can see with her arm moving backwards. But as I use my knee to pull that shoulder back, I'm going to stabilize her elbow here, or support her elbow here, and basically just force her in internal rotation. So as you can see, as my knee is moving back along the shoulder capsule, I'm basically forcing her arm into internal rotation. If you're going to be doing this on one of your athletes or your clients or patients, be careful. I mean, I think within forcing internal rotation, this is one of the few times you really can hurt somebody. I'm a certified athletic trainer, so I've done quite a bit of mobilizations and work on the shoulder, so I feel pretty comfortable with this. So for the chiropractors, the physical therapists, and the certified athletic trainers, this is in our scope of practice. But for some of the personal trainers, or just some of the athletes doing this on each other, if you will, just take care and really practice so you have a good feeling for the end point of the range of motion here, because you don't want to hurt anybody. But once you get a good feeling for it, we have Floss band away, huh? So as you can see, I'm still causing that posterior rotation or shear force on the shoulder capsule here, while I kind of force her arm into internal rotation. Sometimes I change the angle in which I have her arm at, from below 90 degrees to a bit above 90 degrees. And you can also see sometimes I move my shoulder a bit my shoulder, my knee across her shoulder, just kind of changing the place in which I'm causing this posterior shear force here. So as we can see, we're getting a better range of motion here. And what I'm going to do when I'm done with this, I think this has probably been long enough, is I'm just going to take it off here. In the unveiling motion here, I usually let the blood come back. Let the athlete kind of relax for a couple seconds, and then I'm going to lie her back down. So go ahead and lay back down. And if you don't think and you're in a hurry, you always want to use your knee again. But for the stretch, just put a light pressure over her shoulder, holding it from subluxing, or not subluxing, but basically from just raising off the mat, for lack of scientific terms. And I'm just going to bring her to her end range of motion here. We're going to hold it for about 10 seconds. And then releasing her shoulder so she can have a better contraction. I'm just going to have her push back for about 10 seconds. 1, 2, 3. This is about 20% of her strength. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And relax. I'm going to drop that shoulder back down. I'm just going to apply a nice pressure here. Again, when you're doing an internal rotation stretch on the shoulder, the same thing I tell my assistant or my intern, my practicant, whatever you want to call it. I really had them practice getting a good feel for the end point, because you can definitely, I don't know if injure somebody's the correct word, but you can definitely irritate the shoulder, and I guess if you're really foolish about it, you definitely could injure somebody on the internal rotation. So you just want to make sure you have some confidence and a good feeling for the shoulder when you're doing really anything in any rotation, but I think especially internal rotation. So there we are. And last note with Emily, which I spoke on a little bit before, was yeah, you weren't able to play tennis basically at all. I've got a video on the rotator cuff exercises, how we do them a bit differently. I think you were quite successful with our method of rotator cuff exercises, which is also on the website. And the Floss band, I think, did a really good job just regaining and recapturing your motion in your shoulder, huh?
Yes.
And yeah, I think now you're basically able to do anything and everything, huh?
Yeah.
Where before you weren't even able to play, huh?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, cool. So like I said, nothing spectacular that we did. We just followed what our textbooks taught us, but just applied a bit of common sense and real life situational work to it and experience, and there we go. One more. Fixed athlete. Cool, good job. All right, peace.